Okay, so to start things out, I'm just going to say I'm working on a video for Star Wars Jedi Knight right now, but that's taking a little while to get done, so in the meantime, here's something completely different. Anyways, on that note, hello there everybody. If you were to ask me what my favorite fighting game was, I'm not sure I could answer that right away. If you were to ask me my favorite fighting game story mode, however, it'd probably be Granblue Fantasy Versus. The RPG mode was just really fun and a unique way to tackle things and gave it an identity of its own, leaving me wishing it was longer. So imagine my surprise when the game was re-released with an enhanced edition, not only adding rollback netcode, new characters, and Mario Party minigames for some reason, but also a ton of new story content and side quests to tackle, and even more surprising since the new story content continued from where the original plot left off, and they decided to expand on everything, turning it from an excuse plot to have characters fight each other into something genuinely good. Yes, they did simplify the RPG mechanics, but the story went from being like 3 to 4 hours to beat to taking roughly 20 hours to complete. I'm okay with that compromise. But the real highlight of the story mode, for me anyways, were the boss fights. Now, granted, you could count basically every Versus match as a boss fight, but I wanted to narrow it down a bit, so we're looking at the standout fights from Act 1 and 2, as well as Act 3. I'll be including basically every fight, except for the very last one, since that fight is impossible to lose. So, what does this all mean exactly? Well, it leaves me with 17 bosses I'll be taking into account today. 6 bosses from Act 1, and also 6 bosses from Act 3, as well as 5 bosses from Act 2. I think this intro's gone on long enough, so hey, let's get started, shall we?
This ends here!
Commencing test. Paradise lost.
Ram!
This is the extent of your power, singularities.
West Vale.
Here's your first lost battle of the game, just so you know that it is, in fact, a JRPG. I really want to love this boss, but it just feels like a slap in the face with some amazing music to cushion the blow. Except every boss theme in this game is great, so that won't really save it from the garbage tier. This boss never strikes a good balance for me. While its first phase is solid and everything is fairly well telegraphed, it's just kind of a fight where he sits there and it's a punching bag. But at 70% HP, he's going to start advancing towards you, and if he goes for his charge attack, you better get out the way, because that charge is going to lead into a mighty slam that will insta-kill you. And there is no way to dodge it or iframe through it. You just have to be out of the way when he goes for it. Now, that's not a good sign, but hey, there's some other bosses in the game that have insta-kills, and they can still be fun and are fair to deal with. So what's the issue here? The fact that this boss will keep spamming it repeatedly throughout the fight, and the insta-kill is the only way for him to break down the walls to give you more room, and on hard mode, his insta-kill will always have a follow-up attack that also insta-kills you. It's funny the first time it gets you, but after a while it can become downright infuriating because it just becomes a waiting game, and it can't really be a game of chicken where you play the aggression, because if you get hit, you die instantly. And this is a long fight, taking the better part 7 minutes to bring down, and that is way too long for a boss fight outside of like a turn-based RPG. Now, I will say, this fight is not without its merits. I think that the difficulty does provide a really good level of intensity, even if I think it's grossly overtuned. I think the visual design of the boss is awesome, and I think the music that plays here is some of the best in the entire game. Have a listen. Unfortunately, that's about where my praise end, because what really kills this fight is the combination of his kind of weird AI, his insta-kill, and the arena. On normal mode, it isn't too bad, but on hard mode, there is a very realistic chance that he'll advance to the middle of the arena and go for his insta-kill, with you having no safe spots or ways to dodge, so you just die, losing the last 5 minutes of your life and making no progress. And once it gets to low health, he has yet another insta-kill that just nukes the entire screen and is completely undodgeable. I hope you have a Skybound art ready to go, because otherwise, you're dead. Fun fact, that's the highest damage in the entire game. I'm not bothered by difficult bosses. Hell, my favorite boss in Dark Souls 1 is Manus, and he's arguably the hardest boss in the entire game. But what I am bothered by are these sorts of difficult bosses that are only hard because of how much health they have and their ability to more or less kill you in a single shot, either due to you making a slight slip up or due to the game just deciding it hates you and you're gonna die now. I wish I could put this guy higher because he's awesome, but I really think that this fight is insane, and the fact that it's only the second boss in the game, yeah, maybe not the best idea. Number 15, Nier. Yeah, as you've seen, we jumped all the way up from garbage to decent, because yeah, there's really not any bad bosses in this game outside of Colossus and I guess Lucilius 1, but that's just a cutscene fight. Honestly, though, this battle against Nier probably would have done better if it happened earlier in Act 3. The biggest thing going against Nier is she's the second to last boss fight in the game, and she just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and even after we beat her and she joins our team, it's too late for her to do anything. She's never playable in the story, and she doesn't really do anything outside of a brief appearance during the ending where literally everybody shows up. This fight would be perfectly fine just about anywhere else in the game, and as a fight, yeah, she uses her puppet to play a strange ranged game while the main target is her body itself. It's an interesting idea, though it is admittedly very easy. I think my biggest gripe though is the game's official artwork and like the cover art presents her as being one of the main players alongside her protagonists in Beelzebub, and she just shows up at the end. She's pretty easy, and while her boss theme is good when it finally gets going, it takes entirely too long to do so, and by the time it ramps up, she's more or less already beaten. On top of that, you have both Gran and Jita here dunking on her, and for some reason this is the last boss in the game where you have two party members fighting the boss. I honestly feel like this fight was supposed to happen earlier in the game, and they just kind of didn't have a good place to put her. Number 14, Belial. I have to be real, this fight is solid, but it suffers because there's just a better fight against Belial like 30 minutes after this one, so it doesn't really warrant talking about as much. I appreciate the story at this point where you're playing as Beelzebub and you need to tear into him, or I would if I didn't absolutely suck as Beelzebub. It's just a weird case where we have a boss that's well designed and is probably deserving of good tier, but there's just a much better version of the fight, not even an hour later in the game, and the fact that you're forced to play as Beelzebub for this fight is going to be divisive simply because it's a fighting game and everyone has their own preferences, and while Beelzebub isn't a bad character by any means, I'll be honest, I absolutely suck playing as him, so I'm not going to be putting his fight any higher than this. In fact, I wouldn't really be putting any Beelzebub fights very high on this list. Music's pretty damn cool though. Number 13, Siegfried. So, remember what I said about sucking as Beelzebub and how that would affect his rankings? Yeah, that's what brings Siegfried down as well. Siegfried does take the edge over Belial slightly because you only fight him this one time, and he has his own unique gimmick where he utilizes Life Drain in his combos, plus Siegfried and his armor is really freaking cool. The issue, however, lies in the fact that Beelzebub is neither small nor fast, and Siegfried is swinging that greatsword around like it's a cool stick he found. You can easily get trapped against a wall and just be forced to sit there, and if you're not good with Beelzebub, breaking out of Siegfried's combos can be a massive pain. You won't be in any real danger because Beelzebub has health for days, and with healing spells you can pretty much just not die against this boss, but it's not exactly that fun compared to a lot of other fights in this game. Though I will say there is one major thing that gives Siegfried the edge over Belial, and that's the cutscene at the end of the fight. It is very cool. Number 12, Shadow 6. Here we have a boss designed to introduce the idea of mirror matches, and it's definitely not the worst idea in the world, but as a spoiler, this is the only mirror match in the game. You do fight some other Shadow versions of party members, but they're never mirror matches. I definitely enjoy this fight more than the others though, because we finally have more of a proper fight on our hands, playing as a character that's actually pretty good. Now, to be honest, outside of it being a mirror match, there's not really anything crazy stand out about this fight, and I swear Shadow 6 flips a coin on whether or not his AI is going to work, making him one of the easiest fights in the game, at least in my opinion. But hey, even if I'm not good playing at 6, flailing around as him is way more fun than flailing around as Beelzebub, and you only have to play it as him one time. I can say now, though, that we're safely into the good tier of the bosses, and yeah, everything from here is stuff I genuinely really like.
Rose Queen shall test you. Prove yourselves.
I can appreciate a good puzzle boss from time to time, and Rosetta does a pretty good job. The battle is definitely different from other puzzle bosses. Honestly, I think that it doesn't really suffer from the same issues that a lot of puzzle bosses do in most video games, or once you figure out the trick, they're a complete joke. Rosetta doesn't really fall into that trap, at least not too much. While the battle is going to be heavily puzzle focused, with you taking out the red flowers in phase 1 to build up skybound arts to leave her vulnerable, as she'll have different planet attacks to do her real damage. But really though, phase 1 is just kind of a warm-up for the real threat, so it's just there to get you ready for things. Phase 2 is where the difficulty will crank up a lot, as you'll see her surrounding herself in roses to keep herself protected, and the only thing that can pierce it is a skybound art, so you need to destroy the blue butterflies to build up your gauge. This phase is one that's not too bad as long as you're careful, but with the sleep gas going down and those lasers doing a lot of damage, one bad step can spell death very quickly. You also need to make sure you hit the blue butterflies and not the purple ones. Not too big of an issue in phase 2, kind of crippling in phase 3. Now, phase 3 is actually pretty similar to phase 1, but now she's going to stack her vines and rose attacks and everything just together while trapping you in a field of, well, energy, I guess you could say, that lowers your stats, and you have to identify and take out the correct butterflies, all while probably getting poisoned. Looking at it in video, it's pretty obvious which ones are real, but I do wish it was a bit clearer which one was real whenever you're in game, because it's a little hard to make careful observations when everything in this fight is trying to kill you, and one wrong move can mean death. Still, the game's one and only puzzle boss makes a good showing. I just wish Vernon Lyria would be quiet while I'm fighting for my life over here. Guys, you're not helping.
If you truly want to do this,
No more lies.
Think of this fight as the representative for all the regular versus match bosses in the game, and Catalina acts as technically the true close-off to Act 2 of the game, being a duel of equals, even if Vera is in the process of losing her shit and having a serious existential crisis. Anyways, she's dangerous enough that you have to be careful, but not so deadly that you'll be full combo to death for one misinput. And I think one of the reasons I like this game's story mode more than most fighting games is the fact that battles actually take a little bit, and you get to hear the music instead of it just being a 30-second punch-outs that go down before you get to hear really anything happen. It's not that interesting or deep or complex of a fight. It's a standard versus match, but hey, it's a versus match in a game that I think has really fun combat. So that's kind of all you need. I feel like for some, this entry is going to be kind of controversial, and for others, it will make all too much sense. Anyways, we have our first of the 3 final bosses, and Beelzebub is the weakest of them in my opinion. Obviously, I don't think he's bad. He's in the good tier after all, but his difficulty feels a bit overtuned for this being a 3-phase fight. Phase 1 is really what hurts the battle for me, because he's just kind of a spam-happy versus match, and in this, well, that's not an issue for most versus matches. Kinda debilitating when he can attack you from the other side of the screen and teleport on a whim. It doesn't feel that fun, it just feels spastic. But of course, you're not done after just 1 health bar, as Phase 2 will pit you against the Avatar, and he acts as a fairly strong in-game challenge while not being so overwhelming that you need a special build solely to defeat him. Actually, this fight kinda reminds me of Kirby bosses in the way he warps around the arena and sets up projectiles. I don't have a ton to say for this battle, but yeah, it's fairly fun. Music's also pretty cool. Of course, then, after Avatar goes down, we get to Phase 3, where it's time to throw down with Beelzebub for real. And whoo fucking boy, this fight is tough. He uses the same moves he had in Phase 1, but mercifully is nowhere near as spammy, except now he'll take to the sky and do all sorts of crazy attacks, sending out buzzsaws that act as a grab, giving himself a shield with 99% damage reduction, requiring you to use a skybound art, and in my opinion, the scariest skybound art in the game, all while being backed up by one of the best boss themes in the game. Have a listen. Unfortunately, this fight just misses the great tier for me because this battle can be straight up overwhelming with how much you have to deal with, and there's no checkpoints in this fight at all, so if you get 2-tapped by a skybound art in the last phase, tough shit, you're going all the way back to Phase 1. Plus, the side mission that requires you to defeat Beelzebub's final phase is just Cagliostro can go fuck itself. Tierless be damned, a ground-focused fighter does not do well against a boss that spends half the fight in the air, and honestly, because this boss spends so much time in the air, you don't get as much time to really attack him. And I think that's kind of the reason why I like the other 2 final bosses way more. Number 8, Grimnir. Oh, hi Iguazu. Anyways, this guy is one of the last bosses in the game, and essentially the last boss fight that lets you choose what character you want to play as the rest of the in-game bosses will lock you into playing as either Gran, Jita, Beelzebub, or Anila. Like most of the in-game bosses, they take the versus match and put them on crack. With him putting out sigils around the arena that you need to mind your positioning with, this is a fight that I can't decide if he's top of good tier or bottom of great tier, as he's very combo happy, but he will leave openings and won't trap you against the wall indefinitely, and you do have a party member able to help you in this fight. His music is awesome, and his attacks look really cool. I just kinda wish you had the ability to use your entire team for this boss fight, because the way the story goes, you're stuck with only about a third of your party being available, so everyone else just doesn't get to do anything for a lot of Act 3. Still, it's a fun challenge to see if you're truly ready for the endgame, but I'm not sure why they give you almost 10 minutes to beat the fight that isn't going to last that long. Number 7, and I'm being dead serious when I say this, Shadow Lowain. How the heck did a fight between the 2 comedic relief characters end up as one of the last bosses in the game? Well, it's both a meme fight and genuinely well-designed battle, so I guess it lands here on the list? Yeah, I'm very confused how this fight out of all of them got so high. But then I stopped and played the fight and thought about it and was like, oh yeah, it's well-designed. Also, it's kind of funny how the last shadow copy in the game is a fight against Lowain of all characters, the pretty much terrible joke character that no one suspected, and you're using Anila to fight him. You have your two comedic relief characters fighting each other, and it's not hard, but that's probably for the best since you've never played as Anila up to this point. Surprisingly, it's actually a two-phase boss fight as well. Phase 1 is a standard versus match, pretty much just made a bit weird because it's against Lowain, which means he can heal himself, and he just moves weird in general. Then you get to Phase 2, where the fight completely drops any sense of seriousness and embraces just how goofy and honestly kind of stupid it is. But you know what? I like this battle. It's silly and fun. In a way, it's a joke boss, but more because of the scenario surrounding everything and the two characters that are fighting one another, instead of the fight being so easy that you can just button mash 2 times and win. I don't know. It's very weird. It's very goofy, but I enjoy it. I like it, and when I think back on the bosses, this is one of them that sticks out. Number 6, Ares. I gotta be honest, I think Ares does a fantastic job showing off as the first proper boss in the game. It doesn't have any crazy moves or surprises up its sleeves, but it doesn't need to, as this fight exists to show you that the bosses aren't just going to be basic versus battles, and the story has a bit more meat on its bones than you may initially believe. As well as also being your first time fighting alongside a party member. Nothing in this fight is too demanding, but the attacks do require you to be a bit careful in order to not get hit by everything. The design is really cool, the music is good, and it shows the importance of positioning in these boss fights, as well as how useful buffs and debuffs can be. It accomplishes everything a first boss should. While the main story fight doesn't really do anything super crazy, there is at least a decently challenging version of the fight in Narmaya's side mission, and overall I think it's a fantastic introduction for this game. Number 5, Yggdrasil. I can't believe the boss of the Anime Beach filler arc managed to get this high on the list, but hey, I guess that's what happens when the fight is just good. Just like Colossus, you're constantly on the move, and this is probably the largest arena in the entire game, but there are no corners to get trapped in. Overall, Yggdrasil is actually fairly passive compared to earlier bosses, but her battle is designed more as an endurance test, with her laying down hazards and summoning turrets for you to take out. Now, if you were forced to just use melee, this fight would suck. But this is also the point where Matera has finally joined the team, so you can fight the boss at range, and I think it's kind of designed around using her, at least to some extent. I don't have any complaints with this fight. The challenge for the early to mid game is solid. The music is nice once again, and she has some fun moves to dodge. This would probably be my favorite boss fight in Act 1, but, well, you've probably figured out who's left by now. Number 4, Bahamut. Oh no, Bahamut lost control again! Yeah, and the grass is green. So, as far as I'm concerned, this is the best boss in Act 1, and I was actually going back and forth between this boss and the one I have in 3rd place as to which I think is better, and I think this one slightly takes the... well, I think the next one slightly takes the edge, because this fight, well, the first phase is a little slow. This boss, like most, has 2 distinct phases. Phase 1 is when Bahamut is bound up, so he's going to stick to his projectiles that he flings at you, in addition to his tail attack. The tail attack is a little bit interesting because if you're paying attention to his elevation, you'll know if you need to jump it or duck it, and yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The other thing to really note about this fight is that the boss theme is known as Wings of Terror. The first movement of Wings of Terror is a fantastic song that builds up the dread at what you know is coming, and it gives you a feeling of you're fighting something super dangerous that's just waiting to break out. And sure enough, once he gets to half health, he does, in fact, break out. At half health, Bahamut breaks free of his shackles as Wings of Terror finally gets going, turning the fight into outright bullet hell with his projectiles. This would be a pain, but they're actually color coordinated, so you'll know exactly what attack is coming out next. But now that his arms are free, the melee swipes are also on the table, using different sides of the arena to unleash the obligatory giant laser as well. Yeah, I gotta say the Grand Cypher is just built different, considering that this is like the third or fourth time this has happened, and somehow the ship hasn't been completely totaled. This fight is hard, but it's extremely satisfying and surprisingly fair. Even his skybound art, so to speak, that one-shots you, gives a clear and very distinct telegraph with plenty of time to avoid it. And the music that plays here is just glorious. Overall, I think this is a fantastic boss for one of the last battles, at least in the original story, and Bahamut is not just one of the best bosses in the game, but one of the best dragon bosses in any video game, and at least in my opinion. I should really make a top 10 dragon bosses video at some point. Ideas for later.
Singularity. Know that this time around, your gods won't save you.
Lucky for us, I'm not the type to need saving. Take him down! Cheetah! This ends here!
And here we have our final boss of the game, and just like Beelzebub, he's got 3 health bars and 3 phases to get through. Well, actually 4 phases. Unlike Beelzebub, he doesn't have instant kills that make me wish for the heat death of the universe. While Lucilius may only be number 3 on the list, he's still an amazing tier boss fight and more than worthy of it. Honestly, you could pretty much rearrange anything between numbers 2 through 4 in any order you wish. The only things that are really locked in is the number 1 spot, and we'll get to that when we get to that. This battle is an endurance test only really rivaled by Beelzebub, and while you're forced to solo this battle until the very end, thankfully you get some scripted heals throughout the fight, so you can afford to just fight for longer, and the timer will reset. I honestly have no major complaints with the battle from a gameplay standpoint. To be perfectly honest, the main reason why Lucilius is in 3rd place is simply because out of the top spots, his music is my least favorite of them. It's still a great orchestral theme, but it's ultimately just kind of an orchestral theme. There's no real lyrics or vocals at all, and that does make a difference, at least in this game when the vocal tracks are as good as they are. That, and I guess you could say while there are 3 phases, they don't really change a lot visually. It's just more so, okay, phase 2, he's surrounded by a shield, and phase 3, he's bursting out dark energy. It's fun, but yeah, not quite as good as the top 2. Also, I gotta be honest, I absolutely love the finisher for this fight.
Face your own mortality. Why fight on? Is this world truly worth preserving? All shall join you in death, Lucifer.
Let's finish this, once and for all!
Number 2, Avatar Belial. Remember what I said about there being a much better fight against Belial in the game? While he's definitely the easiest of the 3 final bosses, Avatar Belial is also my favorite by a lot. He's pretty much the perfect player character boss, and what made me realize hard mode was the way to go for a lot of these fights and a lot of this game. The bosses have more health and damage, yes, but it feels more in a way that you need to pay attention to the fights and not just be able to tank and spank everything, which is an issue with a lot of, honestly, most of the mid and late game bosses if you're playing on normal. His combo moves are, well, chained together well, and he also leaves plenty of good openings. His attacks look cool, but nothing's an insta-kill or feels cheap. And while his skybound art can feel kind of overwhelming, there's one trick you can do to make things much easier. Block. Yeah, it makes a big difference in this fight. Avatar Belial is what I wish for in every good fighting game boss, not a cheap input reader, but a smart AI that simply knows what they're doing with the game's mechanics. And one that wants to push you to your limits if it can without forcing you to resort to cheese strats. Helped by the fact that you can fight this boss with basically every single character that was available upon Act 2 being released. And, of course, the music that plays in this fight is absolutely fantastic. So, if this boss is everything I could want from a fighting game boss, what could possibly beat it? We have had a near-perfect monster boss and a near-perfect humanoid boss already, so what's left? Well, what about a boss that manages to combine both and has music that's better than any song we've heard so far in the game, at least in my opinion? Yeah, number one spot was locked in long before I made this list. When I started this list, I knew two things. Colossus would be near the bottom, and Zoe would be taking the number one spot. Not just the best boss in the game, but she's one of my favorite boss fights of all time. Like a lot of the toughest fights in this game, she has 3 phases, but unlike Lucilius or Beelzebub, she has the decency to keep it all on a single health bar. Phase 1 has her fight pretty close to how she is as a playable character in a versus match, but with her focusing more on her strong moves, and not so much comboing. Phase 2 has her taking the support role while you fight a divine beast, and every time you bring down the health bar, she'll lower her guard to heal it. Then Phase 3 has her combine with the beast, where she becomes Grand Order Zoe, the Keeper of Balance itself. This is without a doubt one of the hardest fights in the game, but everything just pieces together so well. And your healing should be strong enough to keep you alive. Then there's the music. While it's not technically a dynamic boss theme, it's paced near perfectly to where if you're executing the boss properly, her human phase will happen while it's still in the intense build-up, the divine beast will come out when the techno gets going, and once you get to the part where they fuse together in the final phase, the main melody of the song will begin. It's honestly genuinely impressive how perfectly this battle is paced with the music. This isn't just the best boss in the game in my opinion, but one of the best video game bosses I've ever faced. The attacks are well animated, the music is intense, and there's plenty of opportunities for damage. It rewards mindful aggression, and I had to say it again, the music in this fight is just beautiful. Have a listen. This fight is a perfect way to kickstart Act 2 and show what Rising's story truly had up its sleeve now that they've covered the obligatory fighting game excuse plot, and it's quite the adventure. And with that, the video is over. Originally, I had planned to do a video for Granblue Fantasy Relink, but being fully honest, I just did not have the computer storage for that game, and hey, with Evo right around the corner, I figured may as well strike while the iron's relevant. So I opted to do a video for Versus instead, since I love this game as well. Also, how the hell did this game get twice as many Evo participants as Mortal Kombat 1? Seriously? What the fuck, game? Anyways, that's all for now. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. And I'll see you guys later. Take care. Bye.